Hello, assalamu alaikum everybody. Hope you're all safe, sound, and healthy. And I swear, if this mic does something again, and if I have to patch up another audio, I swear I'm going to dissect this whole mic and find out what's wrong with it. Okay, so yesterday I uploaded the podcast in which I talked about the flood alert and about how it is we could blame it more on man and less on nature because why? Okay, now what again? I guess another main question would be why, why this massive sort of a grievance, you can say, or why is it well, nobody should ask why, because for those people who are not really aware, they think, oh, there are floods, it occurs every now and then, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, we're not immune to flooding, so why this time, why is it so problematic? Because this time we have had the kind of flooding that we've never had in history, you understand. This is basically the first of its kind. For example, the northern areas, they always have these little flash floods, but it never disturbs them. Hold on. Right. But it never disturbs them, right? Why? Because the little flash floods occur and then they just disappear because it's mountain areas, it's hilly areas, it's high altitude. Obviously, where's the water going to go? It's not going to sit there on the rocks or on the mountain peaks. It's going to come down, right? But this time what happened, as again I'll remind you, is the melting glacier. So you've got the melting glacier, and coupled with heavy rains. As we know, this time we have had some of the heaviest rains in the subcontinent again. The northern areas, especially KPK. Now, this time KPK has suffered the most, which is again not what normally happens in KPK. They don't suffer damages like this. This time, again, it's not just the melting glaciers, but again, the rains, the 6 inches worth of rains that kept falling. And then these rains kept having cloud bursts, literally one after the other. See, that was the other problem, is that it's not like you had a little flash flood and then okay, it went through, and then after some time another flood. No, they literally came one after the other, these flash floods. Okay, so basically they didn't have breathing space, right? And again, as you know, the northern areas, it means high altitude, it means lots and lots of mountains, lots and lots of hills, and it also means problematic environment where there's basically you don't have enough green barriers, although once upon a time they did have. Okay, so you don't have enough green barriers remaining then that can help absorb all that water. Okay, so remember that the project that Imran Khan began, of the billion tree, right? The billion tree project was basically, he was aiming also at the northern areas, because the problem with the northern areas was people kept chopping down trees but they didn't replant them. So for example, we have had a sudden influx of deforestation in the northern areas in the recent 2 decades. Okay, or in the past 2 decades, whatever you like to call it. And that is mainly because they kept chopping wood, they kept chopping trees for firewood, then they chopped them for other necessities, and they never replanted. That has cost them today. I hope they realize what they did, because when he started the project, this government, the first thing that they did, as you know, is they not only stopped that project, but they actually went and destroyed the trees. Yes, this government of Maryam Nawaz and Nawaz Sharif and Shahbaz Sharif, they literally went and they actively destroyed those new trees that were being planted. They destroyed the forestation again. Now remember, these are the same people who caused 20 to 30% greenery damage in Lahore alone when they were widening the roads, which was very unnecessary. The roads of the canal were the most beautiful, most scenic roads, and one of their Their most beautiful aspect was the rare, age old ancient trees that were shading the whole place on both sides, that they created a sort of a tunnel. The trees literally turned the roads into a beautiful tunnel, and it was always at least 3 4 degrees cooler, and now if you go to the canal, it's hot as hell. Can you ever imagine that a road on the canal is hot? It's unimaginable. It used to be a few degrees cooler until they came along, and they decided, for the sake of kickbacks, to touch a road that didn't need touching, and they literally ate up half the green belts on both sides, which didn't even belong to them. I mean, although they would claim it does, because it belonged to the university. Punjab University's new campus is on this side. And then on the other side, I mean, throughout this canal road, throughout Lahore, where the canal road is, there's greenery. And then you have the old hospitals, pre-partition hospitals. They have their greenery. They literally try to even take up the parking space of those hospitals. How can you take up parking space of a public hospital? Where's the public supposed to park their cars? On your mother's ass? So this is what they did. They literally obliterated 20% of Lahore's greenery when they first widened these roads, and then when they went on to make the orange train, and then they went on to make their illegal residential areas, which we're now going to come to, they removed again another 10 to 20% of Lahore's greenery. You do understand that this whole part is not technically Lahore. They just keep extending Lahore for all intents and purposes, basically, okay? Lahore is not as large as it is today. They literally put in villages into Lahore and said, oh, this is also Lahore. Oh, this is also Lahore. Why? Because they were grabbing those villages, which were actually agricultural lands, and they were literally stealing them from the people for a very lesser price. And they were forcing people out, and they were turning these lands into residential areas. Okay, and these lands are now on either side of the motorway, all the way to the airport and all the way to the next village or city, right? All these lands. Now, many of these lands, again, the ones especially that curve onto the motorway side, many of these lands would lead to where the Ravi River is. So that's, now you will understand what's happening. Now, the orange train that they made, as you know, they wasted all that money. They used bad materials because, again, it was all about kickbacks. They obliterated 10 to 20% more of Lahore's greenery, and they obliterated our farmlands and natural forests in the process, okay? Because this part, as I said, this part of Lahore is not actually Lahore, the city. These were all, again, originally forests and villages, farmlands, agricultural lands, and forests. And when Punjab University made its new campus on this side, it was literally considered that they had put their campus in the jungle. It was so far away from the actual city. But that's why they chose this land anyway, because over here they could make a huge campus again, away from all that population mess, away from the busy, bustling city. That is what universities do, as you know. They try to take a quiet, secluded place, and that is where then they make their hostels and they make their buildings and everything. But for the longest time, this place has been very peaceful, even though many residential societies did come here. Like you have PCSIR, you have Tech, and anyway, you always had Johor Town on the other side, which is a vast, sprawling neighborhood or residential area, right? One of the biggest residential areas like that. So, I mean, on both sides of the canal, again, you had these residential colonies, or you have them. And still this road, everybody had the common sense never to touch this road because it was cool, it was calm, it was beautiful, it was scenic, it had all the old trees and everything, until Nawaz Sharif, Shehbaz Sharif came, and, in their previous tenure, that's when they did the most damage to Lahore. So Lahore, which was always known as your natural green city, was now no longer your natural green city, okay? And hold on, because I do not want to go another 40 minutes yapping only to find out that 10 minutes have disappeared from the mic. Okay, so let me just check this, please. Right. Thank God that all got recorded well. Right. And it's raining somewhere. Again, I can hear thunderclouds, and I'm checking the forecast and it is showing rain. It's not raining on my side of Lahore, but it's raining, which is not good news. It's not good news, as we know. Again, why? Because India has opened its floodgates. India has opened its dams up, and the water has come here, which again normally would never have affected us. You see, that is the reason why people are kind of pissed off right now with India, although again India is not entirely to blame, but it is the major culprit. Now, but who's the next major culprit? Nawaz Sharif again. Nawaz Sharif, Shahbaz Sharif, their whole family, their children, then their party members like, Saad Rafiq and others. Why? Now, one of their other politicians also, who's also the owner of a so-called urban development project, or whatever they like to call themselves, housing schemes, real estate, whatever, that is Vision City. You must have heard of it, right? Vision Planning or Vision City or whatever. They're the ones who made DHA Phase 8, Defense Housing Authority Phase 8. Problem is that they are the owners of Park View, which just got flooded yesterday at night, despite the fact that they tried to create a barrier, and that even the management of Parkview Society was creating that barrier. And unfortunately, they made the barrier out of mud and sand, but they thought that maybe they could just make a high slope, and that might help stop the coming flood. But the problem is, first of all, obviously mud and sand cannot stop such a huge amount of water coming in. They, maybe they could have tried using concrete blocks or something. But obviously they didn't have enough time, because the announcement was made when the water was literally 2 kilometers away, And if you look at the water, seriously, I thought that they were literally sat on River Ravi's bank or something. But then I was told that no, this is the flood. Okay. That's the problem. You see, these societies were built illegally, which is again something that Imran Khan was resisting. Okay? Obviously he would resist it. Now, this is the same thing that, Defense Housing Authority did, is that they got land that is originally part of the river bed. So when you make these societies on the river bed or on the river bank, it's illegal. Again, do you know how huge a river is? Do you know why we leave all that space around the rivers apart from its own actual bed? Do you know why? So that in cases like these, when the river overflows, it should have space. It should have enough space to expand or contract accordingly. There should be enough space around it to create a larger embankment or to create a barrier. You understand? Because it is a huge amount of water, and Ravi River is supposed to be one of the smallest rivers out of the 5. Now imagine if Ravi River is the smallest, and if you just look at its humongous body of water, where you literally feel like you are a dwarf. Literally, when you drive through Ravi River, when it's the way it is now, when you drive on that bridge above it and you look at that water, you literally feel as if you are going over the sea. This is how vast it looks, how deep it is, and how huge it is. And this is actually the smallest river of the Himalayan rivers that come through. This is the smallest. Imagine. Now, as I keep on saying, we are near the river, but technically we're not. Okay, it's the same thing as we are near the airport. Technically we're not. Okay, so generally, Lahore has never flooded in the history of Pakistan. Yeah, Lahore has never flooded. The areas around the Ravi Bank, again, they always get flooded. Again, why? Because, hello, that's the whole purpose of that whole area. That is why you're never supposed to have residences around the river bank, because that area is there so that if the river swells, if it seeps onto the ground around it, it can soak it back in, which becomes impossible when you encroach upon all that area, all that land around it, and you start making houses, which is what these idiots did. So they don't care about human lives, as you can see. They don't care about legalities. They don't care. Again, these rules, these codes, these laws are made for a reason. If it is illegal to make houses or housing schemes or settlements even around the river bank, then there is a reason. It's for the safety of the people. But no, you decide that you want to earn money, and there's not a single member of this family or of this political party that hasn't done something of the sort, where they have caused huge damage of lives and assets to people, as you can see. Now, the problem is, now you would ask that if it's illegal, why did people go and buy land there? Why did people make houses there? That's the problem with people too. But you see, people think that, it's the colony or the residential area is registered, right? It's been accepted, it's registered by the government. They are part of the government because the owner, this Vision City person, he's a politician, and he's part of the PMLN, a part of Nawaz Sharif's political party. So they're in the government. So what can go wrong, Well, you can see now what can go wrong. What went wrong is people have lost their safety. The poor people of Parkview society literally had to flee their homes, within a 24 hours notice, 48 hours notice, and go and seek refuge with their families in other parts of Lahore. And they're sitting there at their wits' end, stressed out because they don't know what damage the flood is doing to their homes. It's not easy to build a home, and it's even less easier to fill your home up, with all your precious things. Everything has a sentimental value or monetary value. It takes years to gather all that stuff to fill up your home the way you like it. When you decorate your homes, when you make your homes, you make them with love, and you plan a whole future around your homes. It's supposed to be your safe place, And now you have to leave your homes because of this illegality, you see, where consideration was not given to lives and to people's futures. No. And again, what is going to happen to the owners of Parkview? Nothing. They don't even live there. That's the funny part, is that, have you noticed how the owners of societies don't even live in those societies? Why? Because they know that there is danger there. They know that it's, that something can happen any day. So they've taken all your money. You've built your homes, and they've taken all your money and they're gone. Do you think he's going to compensate them for their loss? No, he's not. Have you ever seen any Pakistani company compensate anybody for anything? In Pakistan, people cause you harm and loss, but they never compensate you for it. It's a given fact. It's very rare that you find a company that you can get to compensate for a loss, and even they don't do a good job of it. So imagine what's going on here. So you've played with people's lives, you've played with their money, you've played with their assets, you've caused them future damages that cannot be compensated. And voila. And this is why, although we're very far from the river, but we are extremely close to the river. Why? Because all that space, all that land around the river, that was giving everybody in Lahore a safety net, so that even if India did flood us the way it did this time, we still wouldn't have worried for our lives. We would have stayed calm that, okay, why? Because the river Ravi would have had ample space to spread out and get soaked right back into the soil, which now it cannot, because it takes time. Again, have you seen how large a river is? Do you know how many tons or cubics you have that need to go soak back into the soil? It's not easy. It's not like it's just going to jump up high in the air and then splash down into the soil. As you know, it takes time for the soil also to absorb water, and when it's large quantities, the water will be sitting on the ground for a while before it actually gets absorbed. And that is another reason why you have flash floods, by the way. Flash floods again occur in because you need time, the soil needs time to absorb all that water. And then if you have one flash flood after the other, which is what happened in the northern areas, then your earth, your soil, it it doesn't have enough time to soak it all up. So it's like, hang on here, let me breathe. And it's trying to breathe. Basically, your soil also needs to breathe. It needs a break. It needs time. It's a slow process. And this is why it is essential to have reservoirs, temporary even, just for these purposes. And this is why it is necessary to have rain collection units, because they help with that. They store all that water. So your ground is breathing because all that water has been taken into all these storage units. And then from those storage units, because most of them are made underground, those storage units then slowly allow the water to seep into the soil. Your groundwater level gets back up to normal without causing damage on the surface. As I said, sometimes the simplest and cheapest method is the most effective. Water storages. The simplest, most effective, long-term, cheapest ever. It takes so much time to make dams, but you know what? It doesn't take so much money and time to make storage units for rain. It doesn't. It's very effective. It's much cheaper, and it doesn't take time. It doesn't take time to make them. And again, this is one of the things that Imran Khan was doing, and I was so glad that there was somebody who had that sense to do it, because he was all for the environment too, and he had common sense, something that your politicians will never have. He's not a politician. That's the whole point. We didn't want a bloody politician. We wanted a man with common sense to get the job done. And he was getting the job done. And that is why everybody had a problem. So you tell me that Maryam Nawaz, who was busy taking trips in Japan using our money, that money could have been used here to at least make emergency embankments, considering how we already knew that we were getting more than our fair share of rain, and that India was getting more than their fair share of rain, that Kashmir in India, the occupied Kashmir in India, is facing heavy, again, similar to our northern areas. The rainfall is much heavier and with lesser breaks. You see, that's another thing. If it rains a lot, but the ground also has time to let it seep through, and the sky also lets up a bit to give everybody and the whole earth some time to seep through, and then again it rains, it's okay. But if it rains constantly and it's always heavy rain and nothing around you is able to soak it all up, then that's where you're sitting at. And that is why then even India, for all its dams, at the end couldn't even hold that water. So much for your dams, India, seriously. I am pissed off at India at the most, because as I said, we were still managing. Despite all the heavy rainfall, despite the unusually, call it unusual, for me it wasn't, but okay, call it unusually heavy rainfall, despite all the unexpected, water quantity coming through, despite our rivers getting completely full, more than usual according to them, but again, okay. Despite all of that, we were okay. This time the northern areas, as I said, got hit the most. And the reason, as you know, is we've already explained that. The reason was the onslaught of flash floods, together with the ongoing melting glaciers, together with their deforestation, So all of these factors came into play. And obviously, as you know, there's always landsliding and everything that occurs, right? But they're used to it. See, the people, what they're saying is that they're used to all these minimal things because it hasn't really put any real damage. But this time the damage was huge. Loss of lives, loss of homes. Again, why? Because all these factors came into play, the biggest of them being, again, the melting glacier, which added to it all. And deforestation, chopping down trees, not planting more trees, and then this government coming and destroying the trees that Imran Khan started planting. I mean, just imagine what kind of people you're dealing with here. This government chopped down trees in Lahore. What do you expect? As I said, the once green city is now a polluted city. And by the way, another problem, another reason why to us it's problematic, Pakistan contributes to less than 1% of greenhouse emissions, basically less than 1% of the whole world's pollution or greenhouse emissions is can be attributed to Pakistan. And yet Pakistan is bearing the one of the most heaviest brunts of the of it all. So the countries that are causing all these greenhouse emissions, and all this pollution and tearing up the ozone layer and causing climate change and global warming, Pakistan's not one of them. But Pakistan is one of those countries that is facing the heavy consequences of what other countries are doing, you see. And that is why, again, we are stuck here with all this global warming shit thanks to other countries. This is the one thing you can actually not blame Pakistan for, because Pakistan did not contribute towards all this. But Pakistan is facing it. And so India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, we're all flooding. And then India decides, oh, we can't hold it anymore. But as I said, Pakistan, Punjab didn't flood. It flooded the way it normally does, again, which is around the river banks. Those areas always get flooded, again, because you're not supposed to even have houses near those areas in the first place. But people insist on doing such things, and those areas get flooded. And that's why people every year get relocated. They get evacuated from those areas. That is a part of bad urban planning, which in other words is a part of illegal urban planning, okay? Because we do have laws, but nobody's following them. Nobody ever did. The land mafia, which is Nawaz Sharif's whole political party, they have contributed to this major factor of Punjab getting floods like this in general. Now, Lahore, as I said, never got flooded in the history of Pakistan. Never. And when we say Lahore, we mean this whole part, the city, right? We're not talking about the parts, again, as I said, that are surrounding the riverbank, okay? Now, the reason why right now we are on the verge of high risk, why we have been given the alarm and notification that you are on high alert, you should be on high alert, that you are high risk for flood, is again because of those societies like Parkview and EME and DHA extended phases. And EME, by the way, is also a part of the army. It's their project. So the army, imagine your own army is responsible for this by your army and your government, Nawaz Sharif's party and your army. Both these parties are the culprits here, where they obstructed the natural river path by turning them into housing schemes to make money off of people. And now people are going to suffer. The army's not going to suffer. Your government's not going to suffer. They've taken your money and they're gone. In other words, gone in the sense that what are they going to do? I mean, if they did have to break the laws and make housing societies in lands where they are legally not allowed to, like lands near the airport, you're not allowed to, but they have done it, and lands near the riverbanks, they have done it. So if you have done that, at least you could have taken measures to prevent such disasters from happening, like extending the barrier, and creating the bund, at least also making a higher bund, so that the water can be contained and it wouldn't come over the bund, because that's what happened in Chung. Now the bund in Chung was actually its construction was started in the mid 70s or late 70s, and it ended around the 80s. And that's a very, that is an old barrier. The barrier is still intact. There's nothing wrong with the barrier itself, the bund as in. But why did the flood occur now in Chung, which is, Multan Road again? This part of, so basically on both sides of the, on one side you have Multan Road, on the other side you have Tokar, and both sides have got flooded. Okay, so how is that happening again? Because okay, Multan Road, Chung has the river bund. It's been there since the 70s, 80s. So why did it get flooded? Because the flood, as in the water, the speed and the volume of the water was so much that it literally crossed through, as it came over. It came over the bund, you see, over the barrier. So maybe they should work on the height of the barrier as well, maybe, or some. But again, why should they? Because these housing societies that they put there are the reason why the water is forced to come here, where it never would have come. It never came, it never would have come. Why did it come all the way here? Because you've made housing societies, and so the water does not have any place to seep through, to rest, so that it can finally go back or get absorbed. It doesn't have that space anymore. So when India opened the floodgates, although as I said before India opened the floodgates, we were still managing, and we were not going to get flooded because we were managing somehow the rivers, the canals. We were managing them. We were managing the flow. But once India tipped that how do we say it? India basically, just overflowed an already filled up tub of river. Okay, let's just put it that way. So when India added more water to an already filled river, what's going to happen? Obviously, all that water is going to come out. And now that water, as I said, has no place to go, because you have houses and you have housing schemes. And what happened to all that land, that green land, the natural environmental green barriers which you're supposed to have that allow quick absorption of water? It's all gone. That is why there is a high risk of the flood coming all the way to the city, which it never would have. Never, ever. Because it would have had its own space in which it would have just sat and seeped and gotten absorbed and then moved through the canals and at its own pace without disturbing anybody. That is the whole problem here. These 6 to 7 societies in Tokar that got flooded, and in Multan Road that got flooded, these are those societies that were illegally made on land that was supposed to be left alone for the river. That is what happened. Okay? Together with that, ongoing rainfalls. As I said, we would have managed it if it was only our rainfalls and only our, we would have managed it, because then the water was moving at its own pace and there was no disturbance here. But because of India, when you're having a natural formation of water coming and then getting absorbed or going through the canals or going through the networks or going through or sitting on its bed or whatever, and then you have this influx of tons of water suddenly splashed on, what do you think is going to happen? Your cup is going to overflow. It's going to spill out, isn't it? That is what happened. That is why we're blaming India, because they just threw in tons of water onto an already filled up river, onto already filled up rivers. Now imagine all 3 rivers that were already filled up, and all 3 of them, India overflowed them. It's going to go somewhere, right? It's going to go somewhere, and it has no place to go. And that here is the problem. And this is why, again, the people have a problem with the government and the people have a problem with the army. They created this problem, and now they're pretending that they're working hard to solve the problem. They not only did they create this problem, they never even took steps when creating this problem, you know, to ensure that this problem doesn't occur. And now, when the problem was about to occur and they had prior notice, they still did nothing until the problem reached at our doorsteps. So that's the thing. We are not on, we are way in. We are nowhere near the river. We are way, way in. But at the same time, we are dangerously close, again, because of those societies that were made near the riverbed, near the riverbanks. And they have obstructed the flow and the natural path of the river. And so the river now has to seep through. It's overflowing. It doesn't have a place to rest. It doesn't have a place to go. It doesn't have a place to be absorbed. What the hell do you think is going to happen? Again, as I said, if they had taken measures that, okay, we're encroaching upon the natural river path, so let's do something to ensure that the river has another path to go to. But they didn't do that. So India is highly irresponsible as a neighboring country as well. It's highly irresponsible. Our own government and army has been the bane of our existence, And on the other side now, we've got rains, which is God's wrath and blessing both at the same time. You can figure it out. And here we are. We're sitting here, But again, as I said, none of this would have happened if India was more responsible in its dam building, and India was more responsible in the way it handled its water, and if Pakistan was more responsible in the way it managed its rivers and its river paths, basically. And if Pakistan had made those dams that it was supposed to make, instead of interrupting every single politician that came to make the dam. Okay? But we know that these people are not here for you or me or Pakistan. These people are here to just gobble up whatever they can before Pakistan is completely dismantled. So why would they care, right? To them, lives don't matter. To politicians and to Americans, especially the American government, and we've got all these wackos and all these psychos, to them, lives don't matter. And again, I always blame our own people. Our own people are to be blamed because we allowed them to reach to this point. If you do not cut off the hand of the thief the first time round, he will become a dacoit. Then he will enter your home and become a home invader. And at the end, you're out in the street and he has taken over everything. You should have cut off the hands of these people the first time round. But you people, you thought, oh, it doesn't matter. Oh, we'll see what happens. This Pakistani way of life, oh, we'll see when it happens. Well, it's happening and you're seeing it. Keep on seeing it because there's nothing you can do now about it, can you? This is me signing out. Or do you want me to give more details as to, how many lives have been lost in this rainfall alone before even the India-induced flood? And how many have been evacuated? About 2 lakhs have been evacuated, or in other cases, they're saying about almost 2 million have been evacuated. I don't know if they know the difference between 2 lakhs and 2 million, but okay. And then we have had about at least 14 to 70 lives all around, that have been taken. We've had more than 400 lives that were injured, and we've had emergency treatment camps where the army and the disaster management and the rescue teams are working mostly in the northern areas, some in Punjab. And now this flooding, which they said that they're trying to now, which they're making an emergency embankment, which I think didn't really help because Park View still got flooded. I don't know. What more facts and figures do you want me to give? I've tried to summarize it as much as I could, to be honest, because I'm thinking, what facts and figures should I give you? Yeah. So, as I said, for example, I mean, I have actually covered up most of the reasons in the previous podcast anyway, but I'm just now talking about, major factors here in Lahore that are coming to play, which is why Lahore, which has never, ever, ever seen floods ever, is now suddenly on high alert for flood. Why? And why people are getting pissed off and why people are worried sick when technically we're far away from the river anyway, but we're still at, high risk for flood. So I hope that became clearer. So we've got these major culprits here. And this is why, my friends, we have laws, and this is why they need to be followed. And also, this is why people need to stop thinking that they can trust an illegal housing scheme just because the owner of that scheme is part of the government or part of the army. That is, have you noticed that's the mentality here? Because you think that, oh, because they're part of the army, they're part of the government, obviously they will never allow anything to go wrong in their projects. For them, it will become a matter of ego and reputation. Well, you have seen today that ego, reputation, whatever, things can still go wrong. So, better to invest in a place that is 100% safe than to invest in a place that you think is made up of powerful people, so it doesn't matter if it's illegally made. I mean, that's my take on it. The rest, obviously, I know most of us don't even have much choice. It's not like we have much choice, I understand. But farmers, I think you need to put your foot down and refuse to sell your land no matter how much money they offer. I guess it is better that you just stick to your own lands and develop your own lands, develop your own small towns and villages to your liking, but do not give in to the army or do not give in to the land mafia. I know, again, it's easier said than done, but you know what? We did it. We did it once with Imran Khan, and then we did it again even when he was in jail. We can do it again. So this is me finally signing out. Khuda Hafiz.